during the pandemic. We're joined here today with Nadia Evangelou, Senior Economist and Director of Forecasting at the National Association of Realtors. And we're also joined by Alex Fan, and he's here representing AREA, the Asian Real Estate Association of America. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nadia.
Good morning, everyone. Before starting our presentation, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss with you about the latest housing trends and opportunities during the pandemic. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So today, I will first provide an economic update, focusing mostly on the current employment conditions at national and local level. I will also present to you some housing trends and explain how housing market can help economy to recover from COVID. Finally, I will talk a little bit about how we expect housing market to look like for the rest of the year. So let's start first with the current economic environment, particularly the employment conditions across the country. Since millions of people lost their jobs as a result of the shutdown orders, unemployment is one of this year's biggest challenges for the economy. So one of the most important indicators to watch, and especially at economic turning points as now, is the number of jobless claims, which are released every week from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. According to the release last week, we see that layoffs fell slightly to 1 million from the previous week. Although there is still 1 million people who lost their jobs, layoffs are declining, and especially in the last couple of weeks, we see that layoffs hover over the lowest level since the pandemic started. Just to have a complete picture of the number of layoffs, we see that from the beginning of the lockdown in mid-March to the latest week, there have been nearly 58 million Americans who have lost their jobs. However, we see that there are far fewer, nearly 15 million people who continue to receive unemployment checks, which also implies that even with new layoffs, there is job creation and people are able to come off unemployment. At local level, we see that 39 states reported a decrease in new claims for the week ending in August 22nd. In this map here, we see that compared to the previous week, Mississippi, with minus 37%, experienced the latest drop in layoffs, followed by Florida, minus 37%, and Connecticut, minus 32%. In contrast, in Iowa, layoffs increased 16% from the previous week, followed by Rhode Island, 15%, and Illinois, 13%. We actually release a blog every week with the updates on jobless claims by state every Thursday. And I included here the link to our latest blog. But what are the characteristics of the unemployed? Who are they? Analyzing the demographics of the unemployed, I think that we could get a better idea of how the real estate market will be impacted from these layoffs. Thus, let's take a look at the unemployment rate by age group, race and ethnicity, and education attainment. We see that unemployment rate is higher for young people in the age group of 20 to 34 years old, mostly for young millennials. Specifically, the unemployment rate for young people 20 to 24 years old was 18% in July, compared to 10%, which was the rate for all ages. However, unemployment for young people is recovering faster than the other age groups. Moreover, we get that unemployment rate is higher for African Americans at 15% compared to 9%, which was the rate for whites. Finally, as for the education attainment, we see that the most affected people are these with less than a high school diploma education level. Specifically, as we can see in the bar chart, their employment rate was 15%, while the rate was 7% for people with higher education. But let's go now and see how consumers behave during the pandemic. It's very interesting to see that consumers are saving more now compared to pre-pandemic. Specifically, people saved around 8% of their income before the pandemic, while people saved 18% of their income in July. And then looking at the personal income figures, we see that the personal income increased by nearly 14% in July compared to March. And this increase was mostly because of the massive stimulus package. However, the pandemic has people struggling to pay bills. According to the US Census Bureau, 13% of the mortgage holders did not make last month's payment. This can mean that they may have made a partial payment or a late full payment or no payment at all, or deferred the payment. Actually, we're able to see from this data that 4% of the mortgage holders deferred the payment nationwide. Moreover, we get that 82% of the owners have high or moderate confidence in their ability to make next month's payment. However, this level of confidence is lower for Hispanics and African Americans. Based on the survey as well, we see that most of these owners who were not able to pay last month's payment on time were owners in the age group of 40 to 54 years old, divorced or separated, with children under 18 in the house, African Americans, and with an income less than 50,000. At this point, I would like to present to you some data that I think that we can benefit and actually see which local economies may recover faster. I'm referring to the COVID-19 community mobility reports produced by Google. So let's first talk a little bit about this data set so we will be able to understand better these reports. Specifically, this data comes from users who have opted into location history for their Google account. The goal of this data set is to show how visitors to categorized places changed every day. So we take a look at the counts. To do so, Google compares the number of visits to these specific places every day to the baseline days. And the baseline day represents a normal value for that day of the week. And it's the median value for from the 5-week period from January 3rd to February 6th, 2020, which is considered to be a normal period, pre-pandemic period. So let's go through these reports and specifically see the report for the US for August 25th. The first category in this report is retail and recreation. In this category, we are able to see mobility trends for places like restaurants, coffee places, shopping centers, theme parks, museums, libraries, and movie theaters. And what do we get? We see that the number of visits to this category is down by 13% compared to the baseline. However, when we take a look at the trend, we see that there is an increasing mobility in the retail and recreation since April, when nearly all states were under stay-at-home orders. To give you an idea, back on April 12, the mobility was 63% below the baseline, and that was actually the highest drop for this category. Thus, there is an increase of the mobility in retail and recreation, but we are not yet at the pre-pandemic levels. Regarding the mobility trends for places like groceries and pharmacies, we are almost to normal levels, only 3% down from the baseline. In contrast, we see that people tend to go to parks more than what they used to go back in the baseline period, and actually visits to parks increased 51% compared to the normal. However, we should also have in mind that the baseline dates were during the winter months of January and February, when people could not visit these places in some areas because of the cold weather. Another category is the transit stations, such as subway, bus, and train station, with minus 32%. We also are able to see that many people continue to work remotely, since the number of people going to the office is 37% down from the baseline. Finally, before mentioning the estimate for the residential, I would like to mention that this category is measured in a different way than the other places. The residential category shows a change in duration. So while, as already mentioned, the other categories measure the change in total visitors. Because people already spend much of the day at places of residence, even on work days, the capacity for change isn't so large. So they take a look at the duration. And we get that because of the surge of COVID cases, recent COVID cases, people tend to spend more time in their home in August compared to June. To give you an idea, people used to spend 3% more time than pre-pandemic back in June, while now we get that it is 10% above the baseline. Let's see now how Oregon compares to these national figures. First of all, let's take a look at unemployment conditions. New unemployment claims dropped 3% from the previous week to 5,000 claims in the week ending August 22nd. This translates to about 138 fewer claims. However, total claims, which actually show how many people received unemployment benefits, rose by 5% to nearly 178,000. Nevertheless, when we compare the total number of new claims since the beginning of the pandemic, which is about 580,000, we see that there are far fewer people receiving unemployment checks. Thus, we can say that the labor market is recovering in the area. Let's take a look now at the unemployment rate in Oregon and Salem in Oregon. In July, unemployment rate was slightly higher in Oregon than nationwide, 10.6% in Oregon compared to 10.5% nationwide, while the rate for Salem was lower at 10%. Looking back, we see that unemployment rate in both Salem and Oregon used to be higher than nationwide, but not now. The gap is much lower between the national and statewide level, while unemployment in Salem, we see that it's lower. Regarding the ability of owners to make their payment, we also noticed that in Oregon, there was a lower share of owners who were not able to make their payment. And as you can see, it's 11% in Oregon compared to 13% nationwide. In the meantime, a higher share of owners defer their mortgage in Oregon, 6% compared to 4% across the US. And we also get that there is a higher level of confidence in their ability to pay their mortgage next month. Finally, we see a higher mobility of the residents in Oregon in all the categorized places compared to the typical American. Specifically, the retail and recreation mobility is minus 7% compared to minus 13% nationwide. Mobility in groceries and pharmacies is 3% above the baseline, while in the US it was minus 3%. In transit stations is 24% below the baseline compared to 32% in the US. And for workplaces, it's 38% down from the baseline. So regarding the time that people spend in the residences, we get that it is 8% higher than the pre-pandemic levels. However, we see that more and more people go to parks since mobility is 147% above the baseline, which is much higher than nationwide as well. This means that people spend more time outdoors in Oregon. But let's take a look now at the current housing market conditions in order to get a grasp of what's happening in the real estate market during the pandemic. First of all, the recovery in existing and new home sales ramped up in July. existing home sales rose to the strongest month-over-month pace of 25%, hitting an annual rate of 5.86 million, which is higher than the pre-pandemic level of 5.76 million. Additionally, new home sales rose to 901,000, which is a level that is also higher than the pre-pandemic level of 716,000. At this point, I would like to present to you some weekly market housing indicators that we release every week. Since market conditions change very fast, I think it is better to track the following indicators week by week instead of monthly. So one of the indicators that we track is the change of the new pending contracts, specifically contract signings, which are the pending sales during the past 4 weeks, ending in August 23, were up 19% from 1 year ago. This is a very important indicator, since it shows that there is a very strong pent-up demand for housing. In the meantime, for the second week, new listings were up from 1 year ago, although modestly by 2% year over year. With contract signings outpacing listings, more construction is needed and more housing on the market is needed, so supply can keep up with the increased housing demand. Moreover, we see that home showings picked up in July. According to data from Centrilock, home showings were up for the first time since February at 6% in July. At regional level, showings were up in Midwest by 14%, in Northeast by 13%, and in South by 6%. So the West region had the only decline in showings at -4%. But what about open houses? Are still people interested in going to open houses during the pandemic? We actually track the public interest for open houses using Google Trends. And what we see that public interest in open houses has decreased last week by 38% compared to a year earlier. However, on a weekly basis, more and more people are looking for open houses compared to the beginning of the pandemic, since their interest has increased in the last 4 months. At local level, interest remains strong in Connecticut, Montana, and North Dakota. Finally, I would like to talk a little bit about how the homeownership rate is trending during the pandemic. According to the latest release, the homeownership rate increased to 67.9% by nearly 4 percentage points compared to a year earlier in the second quarter of 2020. In the meantime, both rental and homeowner vacancy rates dropped in spring, showing how strong housing demand is during the pandemic. And the main reason for this strong increase is the ultra low mortgage rates. However, I would like to mention that there are some serious questions about the accuracy of this survey. It's likely the results are distorted by the pandemic. Specifically, in-person interviews were suspended for the duration of the second quarter and replaced with telephone interviews when contact information was available. As a result, the response rate was lower in this report than the average response rates for April, May, and June 2019. Thus, the current report might show the trend that it's increasing, but we should exercise caution, I will say, when using the absolute numbers of homeownership rates. So parsing out by age, so we have the ability to take a look at the homeownership rates by age. We see that homeownership rate rose in all age groups. Specifically, these gains continue to be concentrated among millennial and Gen Xer households, though the share of seniors who own their home remains the highest, I would expect, of all age groups. And then by race and ethnicity, Black households experienced the highest gains in homeownership rates among any other race. The homeownership rate increased by 6.4% from 40.6% in the second quarter of 2019 to 47% in 2020. In comparison, homeownership rates for white households increased 2.9% compared to a year earlier. Thus, we see that Black homeownership continues to be trending upwards. Let's now see what's happening in the housing market here in Oregon. Based on Realtor.com data, home prices continue to rise because of the limited inventory. Specifically in July, the median listing price rose 6% in Oregon and 14% in Salem in Oregon. In the meantime, active listings dropped 45% in Oregon and 28% in Salem. Moreover, the median days on the market in both areas declined by 11% in Oregon and 16% in Salem, which is another indicator of the strong demand for housing. At this point, also, I would like to present to you some data that I recently came across in my effort to find timely migration trends. The Apartment List publishes every week the migration flows for renters at metropolitan area level. So their latest report tracks the searches for rental homes during the period April and August. In recent months, there has been significant speculations about how the pandemic will change where Americans want to live, since they can work remotely and they can be everywhere. Indeed, this data from Apartment List shows that at the broader metro area level, we are beginning to see signs of the COVID effect. For instance, the nation's pricey tech hubs have begun to lose some of the residents, although they still, of course, remain fairly popular destinations. Meanwhile, some more affordable markets are gaining in popularity. So as remote work and widespread layoffs reshape the labor market, the rental market is beginning to respond. So specifically for Salem in Oregon, we see that most of the renters who are looking to move in the area come from Portland and New York. Since Salem is more affordable than these two large metro areas, we see the trend to move to Salem from larger areas to benefit from the lower prices and the bigger spaces that this area has. I could go over more housing trends, indicators, but at this point, I would like to answer the question why housing is so important for the economy, and specifically to show you some of the economic impacts of the homeownership. So let's start with the impact of the real estate market on the economy. So according to the latest data, the housing sector accounted for nearly 18% of the GDP in 2019. Since homeowners spend about 10 years in their homes, this also means that Americans do not view ownership as one and done. They want to constantly improve. So homeowners after 10 years typically sell their starter home and trade up. Thus, homeowners do buy multiple homes over the lifetime, and this process contributes to economic growth and job creation. But how? Specifically with each home sale, there are expenditures related to lawn care, home remodeling, new furniture, mortgage origination, moving, and building new homes. It is true that a part of these earned incomes gets spent in the local economy, which also is called the multiplier effect, in the form of eating at the restaurants, going to a ball game, or buying a car. So we estimated that the total impact of a home sale was nearly 90,000 in 2019 nationwide. I also include here the economic impact of a home sale here in Oregon. So based on our calculations, the economic impact of a home sale in Oregon was nearly 120,000 much higher than the national level. Specifically, we estimated that about 52% of the impact is generated from building new homes, 28% from the real estate industries, and 16% from the multiplier effect. From an individual perspective, we see that home ownership contributes to wealth accumulation for owners. According to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, a typical homeowner's net worth was $231,400, while that of renters was $5,200 as of 2016, and that's the latest data. Given that home prices have risen by 16% since then, the wealth of home owning would have grown even more. That being said, the net worth of typical homeowners is 45 times the net worth of a renter. So based on the above, housing market has a strong impact on the economy. But can actually housing help the economy to recover from COVID shutdowns? We hear this question many times. And if yes, how? The answer is yes, and this is simply because of the strong negative correlation between interest rates and home buying activity. So specifically, recessions lead to a decline in interest rates that consequently lowers borrowing costs for both home buyers and builders. As a result, home buying becomes more attractive and spurs home building and the many related durable consumer goods industries that drive GDP growth. But let's go now and talk a little bit about some opportunities that currently exist in the housing market and people can benefit from them. First of all, mortgage rates dropped to 2.91% last week, hovering at all-time lows. Specifically, the 30-year fixed rate declined more than 80 basis points from the first week of the year in January 2020. So in the meantime, last week, the Fed announced the adoption of a more flexible policy that will seek to achieve inflation that averages 2% over time. And this means that a period where inflation is above 2% can compensate for a period where inflation is below 2%. This significant change can keep interest rates low for longer periods, which could translate into both long periods of cheap mortgages and a stronger job growth. But what does this mean for the potential homebuyer and owner who want to refinance? I calculated here in these slides how much the monthly payment drops with a 3% and a 4% interest rate, mortgage rate. Nationwide, for instance, if the monthly payment decreases by nearly decreases nearly $160 when it drops from 4% to 3%. Specifically, monthly mortgage payment is reduced from $1,310 to $1,150. Respectively, in Salem, the monthly payment drops about $170 from a 100 basis points decline of the rates. Specifically, since the price in Salem is about $340,000, monthly mortgage payment is reduced from $1,450 to $1,280. I also included the monthly payment for Portland to show you a little bit why people may want to move to Salem, since it is more affordable area and they can work remotely from there. Moreover, we conducted a study back in May about the top 10 markets most favorable for millennial homebuyers during the pandemic. After analyzing housing affordability conditions, the presence of millennials in the area, local job market conditions during the pandemic, and inventory availability, we identified the following 10 metro areas to have excellent opportunity for millennial homebuyers. The top 10 areas are here are the following, and you can see them here in the map. So we have Austin in Texas, Dallas in Texas, Des Moines in Iowa, Durham in North Carolina, Houston in Texas, Indianapolis in Indiana, Omaha in Nebraska, Phoenix in Arizona, Portland in Oregon, Salt Lake City in Utah. And yes, Portland is one of these top 10 markets. Thus, since Portland is one of the markets with great opportunities for millennial homebuyers, we also expect to have a busier home buying activity in the surrounding areas as well. Finally, let's see now how we expect housing market to look like for the rest of the year. First of all, we see a V-shaped recovery for the housing sector. The broader economy will not likely have, and the double-digit unemployment rate may persist till the end of the year. So what do we see? Regarding home sales activity, we expect new home sales to rise 17% in 2020 and existing home sales to increase 1%. In the meantime, home prices are expected to continue to rise about 5%, and this is because of the limited inventory. Finally, we expect mortgage rates to hover over the low levels of 3.2%. And this is everything from me. Thank you.
Nadia, thank you so much for that. That was fantastic. I learned a lot.
Perfect.
It looks like we have some questions from the audience also. Okay. One person wanted to know if they could get a copy of these slides. And I think she also wanted to know, is there a place that she can find this information regularly through NAR?
Yes, I already have in the, some links to the ones that I referred, but I will send you the PDF so you can share with everybody. If
okay.
You,
yeah,
right?
Fantastic. Thank you. We have another question. How long do we think rates are going to be this low? And I don't know if that's something you can speak to.
So we expect like 2020 to be like 3.2 and 2021 the same, like 3.2. So since the Fed announced this flexible policy, I think like low mortgage rates will stay like longer. So we're good, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then the next question is, what is driving these millennials to buy in this area, in these areas?
Most important is the affordability. So we see that affordability is an issue now for millennials because they are at the age that they want to buy a house and raise the families over there. So affordability was one of the main factors that we took into account. And then we took a look at the employment. Employment as well is another factor that they look and they go to places that there is a strong employment growth and a strong labor market. So these are the two main factors that we always like take a look for millennials.
Yeah, that's great. That makes tons of sense. And as we're seeing that affordability play out, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the Salem area too.
Now let's see, because yeah, you can, we can keep some like remote work as well, like the new norm is different now, so than the old days. So I think that will make it like easier to go to more affordable areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see how remote work is driving people, like changing where people relocate to, because they're no longer tied to necessarily their job. That's super interesting. Well, thank you so much, Nadia. Giving a little bit more time in case there's any additional questions. It looks like we got them all. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Alex to share a bit more about ARIA.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Nadia. It was really great information. It's just funny. I was just talking, I got my haircut yesterday. First time getting a post-COVID haircut professional. Like my brother's been doing my own hair since COVID. And then yesterday I was like, okay, I'm going to go get a real one. And it was all safe and all that stuff. But like the barber was from the Bay Area. He moved here in early March, April, basically, right at the start of this. And he was saying, yeah, it's so unaffordable in our area. And yeah, the housing is more affordable. I can do the same work I'm doing here, like cutting hair, right, whatever. But like housing's more affordable. to your point, like they're relocating, they're coming here, and he's a millennial, he's under 30. And so I can attest to that myself, right? So anyways, I'll stop talking. My name is Alex Fan, everyone. I'm the one of the representatives for the Asian Real Estate Association of America, and I'm a past president of the Portland chapter. AREA is a trade association. Oops, sorry. I know I can share screen, right? I'm sorry. Let's do that.
Yes, you can.
That's all right. So I'm gonna hit that. Let me know you guys can see this. Okay, cool. So AREA is again a trade association. We're actually the largest AAPI trade association in the United States. We have over 17,000 members nationwide. And it is for real estate professionals, practitioners that serve the AAPI community. So a common myth I hear is, do I have to be Asian, to be a part of AREA? And absolutely no. If you've had conversations with a client about, and they are from an AAPI community, right? This benefits you, right? And what I'm going to share and talk about today is what AREA does do at the national level, what real work we kind of do behind the scenes, alongside NAR. This is kind of our 3-point plan, and this is a bit. This was actually from the tail end of last year, I'll be honest, right? But I don't believe anything has changed this year that I've seen, just because normally we have our policy day in May, but due to COVID, we're not doing that normal stuff that we used to do. But one of the things I'm proud of that I want to share that AREA was able to accomplish for our industry was in 2018, I believe, we had a campaign called the No Other campaign. And on the US Census quarterly reports, right, which NAR is pulling that great data and providing it to us, the AAPI community was considered the other category. So there was no reporting to specific numbers for that population until you've got your 10-year census. And so we helped kind of fight for that, I suppose, if this is the right word I'm trying to choose. And right, we were able to get the Census Bureau to now publish the Asian Pacific Islander community on their quarterly reports, which then in turn creates more programs, more products to serve that community. I think one of the great things I pulled away from that data that I was super kind of happy and excited to see was a rise in Black home ownership levels. We know that through through a lot of mechanisms, that community has been held back from accumulating wealth in this country. And to see that increase because of some programs like this affects everybody, I believe. And so anyways, I'll get off that. And so our strategic mission and vision is to be the voice of Asian American and Pacific Islander homeowners and real estate professionals. We believe one of the current problems is credit scoring models. I don't know if the text looks funny for you guys, but it looks funny on my screen for some reason. But we believe that many of the traditional FICO scoring algorithms are, to this point, antiquated. The way that I'll give a good anecdote. Like a lot of people in Asian cultures do not value debt the same way. We don't like to take on debt. We don't like to owe people money or pay interest or things like that. So getting credit cards, one, is not something that a normal, some people would not feel as a normal practice, or from their country wouldn't do that. And that means that they don't necessarily build credit the same way as other folks, right? And so when they apply for mortgages, they don't have the same scores because the way that they view credit, right? And so we're looking for alternative scoring models, which allows lenders to use different methods. And we are already seeing some out there right now. So I think that's good. But I'm not going to spend too much of your time, okay? So, we were working close with FHFA and Fannie Mae. I'm really proud that when we go to our national conferences at AREA, we have everybody there. Like everybody who represents any government agency is there, and that's because of the voice that AREA has. policy number 2 that we're tackling is lack of diversity and inclusion. So we're talking about disparity for minorities spread across the whole financial services sector, but also including just in, I think, in leadership too, and in different programs and in those chains, right? And so I think that we're, and this includes women too. I want to make sure like it was lack of diversity for women too, as much as people of color in all these different places. So some solutions to that, we're talking about Section 342 of Dodd-Frank Reform and Consumer Protection Act, working with agencies and outreach efforts, increasing racial and gender balances at finance institutions, and requiring federal agencies to create offices for minority and women of inclusion. And then the third problem is lack of language access. So the AAPI community is multicultural and multifaceted. There's various cultures, languages, and ethnicities. And so there's really a lack of education and understanding. I talk to small business owners and community members all the time. And especially during this COVID, time, there's a lot of, they don't know what's going on. They still rely on old sources of communication within their community, the newspaper, internet streaming. And so a lot of that's national. And so they're not sure of what's happening locally or how they can get access to things. And so I think, we're working to improve that. One of the things I know that, on the mortgage residential forms that are coming out, I know they're bringing Vietnamese and Korean, I believe, this year, and so, or already have them. And so again, these are the types of documents that are working on being translated, or that are going to make access more accessible for people. I'm just seeing the chat now. So, oh my gosh, my hair looks amazing. That's nice of you to say that. Thank you. Is ARIA area focused, or did they get involved in more areas? Real estate focus. I would say they are real estate focused, real estate industry focused, both from lending, from investment. ARIA actually is a national organization now too. We do trade missions to other countries. Every 2 years, we do a trade mission in China or in the United States. So we take turns, but we actually go to Beijing and different areas in China, and we meet with the government, policymakers in housing, and also the representatives of all the largest real estate companies in China. It's really amazing, those relationships you meet, and you make. It's pretty incredible. So it's been a really interesting thing, and we bring those types of opportunities to our members through ARIA's global investment network. We have a different platform for that, as well as education and a Give Back Foundation too. So we do a lot in our local Portland chapter. I'll speak a little bit about that. We have over 100 members here in Oregon, and each year we do an annual gala and fundraiser. This year we're going virtual, so it'll be interesting to figure that out. But every year we've raised over $10,000 for our local community. We support another local nonprofit here. This last year it was Community Warehouse. It's been the Immigrant Refugee Community Organization. We've supported many different kind of sectors of our community through just giving back. And so we do a lot of different things like that, and it's a really good group to network with, a lot of professionals. And anyways, I think I'll end it with that, but please find me on social media. I'd love to connect with you guys and tell you more about ARIA anytime, okay? Thanks, Erica. Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that.
How do I stop this?
Okay, perfect. So I had a follow-up question with, you were talking about increasing representation in leadership roles, and there's a group out of Portland called the Coalition of Communities of Color, and they've been working with the governor to increase diversity on government agency boards, committees, and leadership teams. And they're trying, I think their goal is to get it to be all of those committees to be 25% people of color. And so I don't know if you've had any interaction with them, but
personally, no, I haven't. I'm on the PMAR PAC trustees, and so we get to chat with a lot of folks. I just yesterday, funny enough, I live in Beaverton, and so our mayor is running for re-election, and so his campaign manager asked me to be on their campaign thing. So
Oh.
I actually have yeah, I don't, and I would be interested in finding out more and connecting with
Sure.
them. I mean, I have my own things that I think I want to do. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
So I'm happy. I'll set up an introduction.
please, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like we don't have any more questions from our members. Thank you both so much for your time. Really appreciate it. This is super insightful.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you,
Thank
Nadia.
you. Thank you, Alex, too. Yeah.
And for all of our members, we have another webinar coming up on September 8th on fair housing and the history of discrimination in Oregon. So housing discrimination in Oregon. That one is part of our diversity initiative, so it will be free for anyone who would like to attend. Thanks so much and have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.